WhistlinDiesel video where they backed the Cybertruck off the flatbed?
No, I keep seeing screenshot posts, but I
Mhm.
haven't actually watched the video.
And then they did the same thing with the Ford F-150.
Like, were they trying to back it off the flatbed to see if it would, like, what was the concept of
Well,
this?
it's the durability test WhistlinDiesel's doing. He's doing durability tests between an F-150 and the Cybertruck.
So 2 pieces of junk. Okay.
2 pieces of junk.
See which is the bigger piece of junk.
Yes.
All
So
right, I'm in.
they backed the trucks off of the flatbed, and of course the drive shaft got all pinched on the F-150, so they couldn't even do the test, so they had to put a new drive shaft in it.
Makes sense.
The one test was they're driving up a dirt ramp over some big concrete conduit, right?
Yeah.
So they're going like this and coming off. Cybertruck did it. The F-150, since it's got a longer wheelbase, got up and got stuck and hung
I
up,
centered on it.
right? So then they hooked the Cybertruck up to the back to pull it off, and it ripped the whole rear bumper off the Cybertruck. Frame and all, just ripped the frame pinch welds right off. And they weren't pulling hard.
Yeah.
It pulled off after it was already snug, which is kind of concerning since that thing has like an 11,000 pound tow rating or some damn thing.
Clearly they were over it.
Yeah, I guess.
Hey everyone, I'm Brad from Calgary.
This is Sean from Cambridge, Ontario.
I'm Terry from Cornwall, Ontario.
Hey, this is Larry from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and you're listening to the Towing Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Towing Life Podcast, where the ditches are deep, the trucks are loaded, but the drivers are not. I am your host, Towman G, and as usual, I am joined by my co-host, friend, and former co-worker, the man with very strong opinions, Mr. Plain Guy.
What is going on, G? What is going on?
Oh, I had a couple drinky poos last night around a bonfire, burning some brush. So
Nice.
It was a nice night, and now it's pouring down rain. So I'm glad I didn't try to do that today.
Yeah, no, you sent me that photo. I thought it was pretty cool. Having a nice little bonfire on a 40-degree humidex day.
Yeah.
Probably a great idea.
I made it a white man fire too. The flames were like 8 feet, 9 feet tall at some point.
I don't know if I'm not going to reference that term again. But hey, you know what? It's a Canadian long weekend. Not really. It's a civic holiday in Canada. Fun fact. We have what's called Family Day, because I don't know if Family Day is celebrated in the US. There's the Family Day and the August long weekend. As a company, you have to pay vacation pay for one or the other. You do not have to pay for both. So a lot of companies will choose to either pay the August long weekend or they'll pay the Family Day long weekend, which falls somewhere in February, I think. Which, who needs a holiday in February?
Yeah.
When there's nothing to do and it's cold. It's meant to go tobogganing and everything else, I guess, skating with the family.
Yeah.
So we are on a long weekend. We are in the midst, in Ontario at least, of, we had quite the heat all week. When you're talking like 99 to 100% humidity and plus 30 weather without the humidity, it got hot. You walked outside and you started sweating. You didn't have to do anything. And that's not just because I'm fat. That was just the effect of humidity overall. Like the grass was damp constantly because of the humidity. I've been waiting to mow my lawn for it to like dry up a little bit, make it easier on the mower, and then it's pouring rain today. So my poor mower and my poor lawn is going to have to suffer when I eventually get to cutting down the hayfield. I'm honestly inquiring about goats. If you have any goats for sale, please contact me directly. I'd love to buy them.
No, you don't buy goats for that. You just rent them.
You can rent goats?
You can rent goats, yeah. You can
I
get
have a lot of customers
however
that
many
take
goats you need for a certain acreage, and they'll drop the goats off, and say, okay, well, you're going to have 8 goats to do this 2-acre per plot of land. You're probably going to need 3-4 days, and then as long as it's fenced in, they come in, scout the area. They'll graze everything, and then they'll come pick up their goats.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to find me a goat rental company. I feel like with a lot of my clientele, it shouldn't be very hard. I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Now, what's the limit? Like, I don't have acreage. I've got like yardage. Is there like a minimum requirement of yardage or acreage?
That would be a company to company thing.
But isn't it one of those things where, like, isn't the whole point of buying these things that they walk and they graze, and then by the time they're done, they start back over again? And, like, isn't that the whole point of owning goats?
Well,
I
you
mean, there's
need a
other
fair,
points.
so you can do rotational grazing, right? Which is you got one field, you put them on there, they graze it all down, move to the next, right? So
Mhm.
that's what these companies are set up to do. Is they have people that they've got a lot of overgrown brush, not very desirable grasses or legumes. They'll send the goats in there, they'll clean up all your shit, and then they take the goats and send them over to some other guy's property that'll pay them to feed their goats for free, type thing, right?
Jesus, it's a genius business model. I
It
thought
is.
towing was a great idea, but grazing goat rental.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I could see our next business venture.
Highland cattle's actually a little bit better. They're a
Oh,
bit bigger. They'll eat a little bit more, but they got a lot of higher reach. So if you got like low hanging branches, they'll pick stuff off the branches. And since they came from the Highlands, is kind of wastelandy, especially in the wintertime, they got pretty good at eating like sticks and twigs and stuff too.
hmm. Don't
Yeah,
even have to pick those up before mowing the lawn.
exactly.
They mow the lawn and take up all the brush at the same time. I'm
Mhm.
worried that they'll eat my dog's toys that are all in the yard. That
Well,
was
you got
always
to
the
watch out for the horns.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My dog doesn't play friendly with others. I don't think it'd be. I think a goat she could mess with.
Yeah,
I don't think she's messing with a Highland cattle.
no,
I
no.
think it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
So
Towing stuff. Yes.
before we get too far off pace, if we haven't already, it's a good time to mention your questions, comments, concerns, everything for the show, opinions, especially moving forward with a big announcement coming this episode. Where can you send them? Where can you reach us? It's very simple. You can head over to our website at www.towinglife.ca. You can email us directly at thetowinglife@gmail.com. So thetowinglife@gmail.com. Or you can find us over on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast. If you are watching over on the YouTube side, do not forget to hit the like and subscribe. There's also an option to comment down below. Every bit of input that you guys give really helps us push forward the show, whether it comes to new ideas, topics for the show, and whatnot. We always do appreciate it. You are the true reason why this show continues into episode 147
Yeah.
currently today. So quite the milestone coming. That being said, great time to announce we have decided that we will be doing a live for our 150th episode. As you know, 150 normally comes up. It's right about our 3-year anniversary.
Mhm.
We normally aim for about 50 episodes a year. I got to remember when the first one is. That might be trivia for the night of the show.
I think it was
So
trivia for our last live too.
it might be trivia for the next live. The longer it gets behind, I don't even know what it is. So we will have to have it ready. But yes, we are going to be live Sunday, August 25th, 6 p.m. Eastern time, EST. So that's 3 p.m. over on the West Coast. G didn't know the time before this. Probably thought we were doing about 7 o'clock, but I decided we're doing 6.
Okay.
6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. on the West Coast. You can check in. We're going to reach out to a lot of our supporters of the show like we've done in the past. Look about giveaways and prizes for you guys. Have some little trivia contest, maybe have a little live interaction with the show. We've had great success. This is our third live. This would be our third live.
Yeah.
Every one of them has been awesome with you guys. You guys have really shown up and come out and help deliver the content, help have a conversation. We'll see about maybe if we can book a couple like maybe random guests that we can get on for that show as well. Come on and talk with the people and everything else. So mark your calendars now. Sunday, August 25th, 6 p.m. Eastern, the Towing Life Podcast Live 3.0 for 150 episodes. It's our way to celebrate and have some fun with you guys.
Yeah. We do have a couple of YouTube comments. We got one from Toe Pappy. First like and view. Love you guys. Watch weekly from the seat of the F550 in West GA. Thanks, Toe Pappy.
Western Georgia. Nice.
Yeah. Joe came back and says he's currently in a battle with the big 3-letter roadside in the US about having our first and last names and pictures displayed to the member. His picture is a 1976 photograph, which they have requested he remove, and he told them no effing way. I told them to remove my last name, and they still have not. I told my area rep I will lawyer up because I never gave you permission and I don't work for you guys.
Yeah, it's a fair, right? We've talked about that. The roadsides, kind of making decisions without even talking with operators. I don't know if that's what the 3-letter down in the States did. But in Canada, that's 100% what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a conversation. It was, I think, like a week after they started doing it. Hey, by the way,
No,
we're
I don't
giving.
even think they told us. I think
I
a
think
member
there
showed us.
was. I
Was
think
there?
there was something. Yeah, I think there was, but it was well after this program had already started
Mm-hmm.
that they started doing these changes. So no, I
It's like
mean
when you
it.
get a job, especially being contracted to one of these roadsides, when you get a job, you don't sign any paperwork for this roadside, and in the fine print, it says it somewhere in there.
Mhm.
Like, there's nothing like
No,
that.
but your employer might.
Yeah.
And then your employer is supposed to pass off that information, which is very possible. Even in our case, when we worked together, that just didn't happen.
No.
Right? We never, they were never one to discuss any conversations they had with any of their, which and part of it is their right? Like we
Mhm.
don't need to know the inner workings of your business, but when it affects drivers directly, like something like using our full name and photos,
Mhm.
it's a little, it can be a little uneasy for some.
Yeah. And we also have Derek here. Exclusively for OPP calls, I prepared 2 small slips of paper with all the relevant information that a cop requires. Of course, I still have a binder for law and safety enforcement officers. The slips of paper are the same size as ownership/insurance slip, and I laminated them to keep them in a typical wallet-size insurance folder. That's a good idea.
No,
I arranged the 2 slips of paper so when the folder is flipped open, the information is in full display on both slips. In most cases, the officer will simply use their cell phones to take a picture of it, making it easier to process an incident report in their car rather than wrestling with the
the
11-inch 3-ring binder with multiple pages. I operate one of 2 trucks depending on the shift, so I've prepared a slip for each one separately, and I alternate the folder as required. The officers I've dealt with seem to appreciate the convenience of my method. Yeah.
No, no, it is true, right? We were talking about the CA requirements and the paperwork that you got to keep on board. I've heard of companies doing that where they, the back page of a binder is every different employee's
Mm,
operator, like on a full sheet, and then just laminate the full sheet and put it in.
mm,
The only problem I have with that is every time you make a hire,
mm,
you need to make sure you've gone through all the binders and added it again.
yep,
I've really put the onus on my operators now that we do know that we can provide that electronically.
mm,
So here's what you do. When you get it, take a screenshot of it, save it in an album on your phone that's available offline,
yep,
available at all times. When
mm,
the cop comes, show them that. Here you go. Here's my tow operator certificate. As for the
mm,
company side of things, of course, it's in all the binders,
mm,
right? So hand them the binder. I like making it easier for the officers.
mm,
At the same time, I didn't build this program. You did.
yeah,
So you get the information at how I'm going to give it to you. I know that's not the right approach to take with law enforcement, because anyone who's worked with law enforcement knows that if you make their job more difficult, they are not going to make yours easier.
yep,
Right? Like that is the understanding. So there is a respect thing. I've tried reaching out to an officer's. I have a simple app that I had built for my
mm,
drivers. They pull up on scene, they get the incident number and the email of the officer.
mm,
15 seconds, type that in, select their truck, select the driver,
yep,
send. The officer gets an email, all the information, PDF copies of everything done.
yep. Now,
Right?
that might not be so great if they're in a bad cell service area, right?
100%.
So
100%. And
that's,
that's why, like I said, the photo is to me the ideal,
mhm,
because here's the photo. I mean, nowadays with Cloud Drop, you don't need to, like, you don't need to be in a good cell phone area, right?
yeah,
You can send files via Bluetooth, or they can take a picture of it.
yep,
Here's my screen, take a picture. Here's my information. Have a good day.
mhm. But I
Right.
do kind of like the idea of every truck has a binder and it's got all the driver's information that could potentially drive that truck,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's just like I said, the hard part is whenever you make a change. It's easy for smaller operations
Mhm.
with 2-3 drivers in a truck. Very easy to do. When you start
Well,
to
even
get
if
to
the
it,
binder has like the laminated slips and you just put in a new piece of paper every time you get a new driver and just put it in another slip, right? So then
yeah.
each truck has all the information.
But again, until you get, like, I've got 15, 16 different drivers.
Yeah.
It need to all be there
Mhm.
in 15, 16 trucks.
Yeah.
And the one that you miss is the time that, you know what I mean, they go out,
Yeah.
they don't have it with them, and that's when you're asking for it. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm all for, at the time of dispatch giving me an officer's email.
Yep.
And dispatch knows what truck and driver's going. Boom, it's gone. It's there before the truck even gets there.
Yeah.
Right. I think in the age of technology that we're in, again, this applies to our area, not so much in the northern rural areas where, again, cell phone reception is spotty at times. But I mean, if I send it right to the comm center who's requesting me for the call, surely that would be acceptable. Here, boom, boom. The officer just got to confirm that's who showed up.
So then why can't we just send all this information over to the comms center and they just have it on file and you tell them what driver's showing up?
Exactly.
Right? Like
we had that.
Why can't they just have a database of all the tow truck drivers and whoever shows up? It's like, hey, I'm Billy Bob Joe. I'm Towman G. You should have all my paperwork already. Just bleep, bloop. There it is.
Before TSIA, when there was TSSO, a lot of officers in our area had exactly that. Once they would get ours they would put a list together. We would send it off to the detachment. Sometimes it wouldn't get to the on-road officers, but like a lot of the on-road officers, especially the traffic enforcement, so ones that would be more likely to call us, had a list of all our guys, and they knew. So as soon as I showed up, hey, hey, plane guy, okay, got your stuff, no problem. Like, they know who I am. They've got all my numbers that they need. They've got all my information. The only thing they would take is the plate number off the truck, because from the plate number they can get the CVOR number. That those requirements that they had. Right? Like, they don't need you to show you their CVOR. They know if you have a CVOR that is valid. Yep. It takes like a couple beep boop boops into a computer and they know that your CVOR is valid. They know that your DL is valid. Yep. They know, I imagine they might not know if your tow operator certificate and stuff is valid yet, because I'm sure the systems still aren't fully in place, because no government would ever rush a program into operation without having all this set up in the background, I'm sure. But yes, they can, they have all that information. So no, like the ideas, like the comments, keep them coming. They're again kind of interesting. Western Georgia, I'll be down your way, I think, in sometime in November, heading down to Louisiana for a training course. So I feel, just based on naming states, I feel like Louisiana and Georgia are fairly close to each other. But I'm not a geographist.
Geographist?
A geographist. Okay. It sounds like a real word. I don't know if
it might be. Hey Siri, is geographist a real word?
A cartologist or cartographer, a map person.
Yeah.
So anyways, we wanted to get into a little bit of fun this episode and go over something a little bit different.
We wanted to give you ammunition for the live coming up.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not a big movie person, and I'm definitely not a big superhero person, but one thing that I've always heard is, across all these universes of movies and whatever, is origin stories, right? Every bad guy, every good guy has their origin story. And Towman G and I are no different. We want to go over kind of a little bit of our history, as for the show a little bit, but mainly where we come from in the towing industry. I think it's 147 episodes in. It is probably pretty good for you to understand what our actual experience and time in the industry, and kind of have a general idea about what it is, who we are, what we do, how long we've been doing it, what our favorite color crayon is to eat. All that good stuff.
Mine's the purple.
Yeah. It tastes like blueberries. Yeah. These schnazelberries taste like schnazelberries. I don't know if you know that reference from a movie.
Yeah.
I'm not a superhero movie person. Didn't say I wasn't a movie person. So G, we'll start with you. Where did you start in the towing industry? Let's go before you even started. I don't want to go back to the day your mom met your dad and crawled into the back of a 69 Chevelle. I don't want to go that far back. But we can go as far back as like maybe a year or two before you started in the towing industry and what exactly it was you were doing.
Well, I'll do you one better. So I was a mobile DJ. I got that job when I was in elementary school, carried that through all of high school and outside of high school. In my later years of high school, I started doing tree work part-time. And then
what kind of tree work?
So like I was removing trees, pruning trees. I was the groundsman. I'm too fat to be a climber.
I was going to say, I cannot see you climbing a tree. Okay.
Yeah, so stump grinding, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I did like an EOP program in high school to get an extra credit. So every 110, 111 hours, you get an extra credit. Okay. So I graduated with a lot of extra credits because I worked my ass off. I mean, I fudged the paperwork, but and I did tree work for that. I was getting paid well. I was 17.38 an hour, still in high school. I pissed all that money away in either food or my truck or women at the time. Um, it was a good time. After that, I got into snow plowing, did that off and on. Went to college for heavy equipment operator. Spent 12 grand for a 12-week course playing in a sandbox all summer long.
Nice.
Outside of college, I was like, well, I know a couple people in the towing industry. I was looking for work and I didn't really have that many bills at the time. Truck was paid off. So I reached out to one of the towing pages. I think it was Towing in Canada. It's like, hey, I'm a 20-year-old looking to potentially get into the towing industry. Pay me what I'm worth. I'm fairly mechanically inclined, but I'd like to see if it's a fit for me. And a couple people reached out to me. I went and did a training day out on the other side of the lake for a small company. Really liked the truck. It was a F550. It was green, regular cab, 5-speed with a 7.3. Beautiful looking truck, but it just wasn't for me. And then Mr. Plane Guy reached out to me over Facebook, and he was like, "Yeah, come on down." And I came on down. And did I even give you a resume? I think I did.
I think you did.
And he asked me, he had a car on the back of his tow truck already. And he was like, "What's the issue with this?" And I was like, "I think your chains need to be crossed." And I learned very quickly you don't cross your chains on a wheel lift.
That's still a debatable fact, but yep.
Yeah. And it turns out that he didn't have his rollover pins in on a Vulcan wrecker. That's the thing that he was pointing out to me, wanting to see if I'd pick up on it. But obviously I didn't. Then a day or two later, I came in and actually had a meeting with the owners of the company, and they hired me on. I had to move to town. So the girlfriend, me and her, we started renting a place together. Now, you got to think, I was a 20-year-old, did the training in the towing industry, had this girlfriend. We were dating for maybe 3 weeks prior to having to move in together because I needed to be in this town and she
Yeah,
needed
to
to be.
satisfy our police contract and that. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I didn't live overly far away. I think I was 30, 40 minutes away, but it was still just too far. Right. So I moved into this town. I was paying $1,800 a month in rent for a little 3-bedroom because it was the only place I could find that had a driveway for a tow truck.
Yep.
Right.
It was a good little spot.
It's a perfect little spot. It was the main intersection of town. It was noisy as hell, but I was close to everything going on in that town. Ideal for a tow truck driver. But for me, coming from a farm and rural areas to living in the main intersection of town, it was definitely a culture shock. I lived right next door to a gas station and a Tim Hortons.
I'd like to correct this. Tomanji is saying he moved into the main center of town. It was a town of like 500 people.
No.
Maybe, okay, 2,000, 3,000
Yeah.
in the actual town itself. Yes, it wasn't bigger than 3,000 people. So,
but it's
just
still
for
a big
context,
town for me,
the culture shock was going from more cattle to people, to more people than cattle, and still like under 3,000 people.
Yeah. So for me, it's like a 10, 15-minute drive into a local Timmy's going to this place where I had a Timmy's right next door.
Yeah, you could walk.
To be
over
fair, it wasn't a full Timmy's. They didn't have the wraps and stuff. They had the bagels and everything. So
it was like a Timmy's outlet.
Yeah, in a gas station, Timmy's gas stations. Anyways, so me being a 20-year-old, new job, completely new industry, not used to the amount of hours that I'm going to be working, new house, first time living away from home. So that relationship didn't end well. I was young and dumb, and just so many new things that it just didn't work out. I wanted to be more free, I guess you could say, and I just didn't want to be tied down in that time because the towing industry is a freeing job. Like you're just out doing new things every day, and it's very easy to bring that lifestyle home with you of just wanting to go out and do things, right?
Not to mention when you and the girl you were with at the time had gotten together, you weren't involved in the towing industry, and I find that's harder for most people. Most people that come into the towing industry with a partner already in tow, no pun intended, tend to have a harder time adapting to that lifestyle. Like the partner definitely does, which puts a strain on the operator themselves. Where meeting a partner when you're already in this industry, tends to be a little easier, right?
Yeah.
Because they see it right from the get-go.
Yeah, they know what they're signing up for from the get-go. Now, we weren't together for very long, like I said, so
Mm,
we were still getting to know each other, plus getting to know this industry,
mm,
getting to know the town because I just moved there. It was a lot of things. I don't want to say that it wasn't my fault that we broke up. It 100% was. We are back together now. We did find each other again, so that's
there you go.
all's well that ends well. Um, so yeah, we split, and then I was fronting the $1,800 a month in rent myself. And this company that we worked for, we were brokers, so that was a big learning curve as well.
Yep.
Um, it ended up where I did just shy of two years there. The first year, tax time came around, and I was fine. The second year, after having a full year worth of taxes built up, I didn't realize I would need to set away like $15,000 for the year
Hmm.
when 50% of my paychecks were going to rent to begin with.
Hmm. Yeah,
Now
you were
that
young and dumb and not thinking
yeah,
about the future.
so then I was like, oh, I can't, like, if I worked the amount of tax that I needed to pay, the amount of rent that I paid, plus my insurance and my gas, like I made no money this year. Like
Mhm.
I did a breakdown, and I think I technically made, I think it was 7 or 8% for the year that I worked, right?
Mhm.
After all to tax and all the rent and my other living expenses, like that's not enough, right?
Mhm.
So I decided, you know what, I'm going to move home, back to the farm, which worked out well because we had a situation going on here, and we had some people renting out the basement, and they would stop paying rent. But if you have an immediate family member to move in, you can get
You
them
can
out,
evict. You can evict
right?
much easier than, yeah, especially in Canada. Evictions are not an easy process right now.
No, they're not. So it worked out good because the reserve that was in the town that I lived in, I was like, you know what? I don't want to drive the 40 minutes to get my cigarettes. I'm going to quit smoking. So I quit smoking when I moved back home and picked up the stupid vape.
Yeah.
Um, so then once I came home, I started working for the local towing company here, in my town. It's just a small owner operator type thing. I was the second op. And at this time, I think I was 22, maybe going on 23, since I started when I was 20,
Yeah.
19,
3
20.
years experience, ego the size of a
Yeah.
boulder on your head.
And here his insurance was pretty bad to begin with. So for me, it would cost like an extra almost $20,000 a year just to keep me insured on one truck.
Jesus.
Yeah. So when COVID hit in 2020, I said to him, I was like, honestly, man, like, I know you're not making a lot of money. You obviously make more money going out and doing the calls by yourself. If you want, I can just be on backup. You could take me off the payroll, whatever. We can figure out payment later when you bring me back on. I just want to make it easy for you because I know you're a small business and the work's pretty well dried up, right?
Mhm.
And especially since the traveling restrictions and everything, and we live in a pass-through town for a lot of tourists in the summer, like it just wasn't a great thing for the towing industry in my area.
Mhm.
Industry being a couple companies, but so did a couple months of the EI and everything, and then a good friend down in the company that I ended up working for said, "Hey, if you're looking for work, we could use an extra set of hands." And I was like, "Well, I can only do days." They're like, "That's fine. We just need some
Yeah.
extra help." So then I went down, did a full summer with them. I think I went and plowed for that winter just to have a bit of a change of pace, and then went back in, and towed with them for another 3 years. And I got out of the industry fall of 23 due to medical reasons, and I haven't gone back. So I haven't personally had to deal with all these new TSIA regulations. And I'm kind of thankful because I've talked to a lot of towers on the street and they aren't very happy about it. There's a lot of confusion, I think. A lot of not necessarily misinformation out there, just a lot of information that doesn't get passed through correctly or
Yeah.
concise, especially when one tower talks to another, the
Yeah.
broken telephone thing.
A lot of contradicting information,
Yeah,
and no one's really sure what the true answer is. And yeah.
yeah. But the towing industry has definitely taught me a lot over the years about just a lot of things. Working as a team and being able to work in high stress situations, being able to hopefully manage fatigue in a good way and like burnout,
Mhm.
being able to pick up on signs of stuff like that to be able to take better care of yourself, and just a lot of people skills, because you meet just so many people and have so many different conversations, problem
Yep.
solving skills, and being able to think outside the box. And it, if you're looking at it on a resume of just being a tow truck driver, you only put like 3 or 4 sentences about it on there.
Mhm.
But if you actually have an interview with someone and you can convey some of the stuff that you did, and
Mhm.
it is a really good hiring asset if you get to the interview stage. But on a resume, it's not a jump out. Oh, look at this. We definitely need this guy because he's a tow truck driver. I'm talking about transferable skills into different
Yeah,
sectors.
no, of course.
Um, but I still haven't stopped. I went out and I got my B license, and I'm going for my Z endorsement in a couple of weeks, because with just a B, ooh, look at you. You can drive like a school bus or straight trucks, but no air brakes. So even if you're applying to different things, if you've got like a full DZ or BZ or whatever, you can apply for a lot more jobs. Hell, I can then even go to my local farmers and say I can drive your trucks and haul grain for you to the elevator, right? Right. It just makes your resume that much better.
On a straight truck, you can, not on a trailer, but
Yeah, a straight truck, I mean, right? Which we got a lot
yeah.
of straight truck haulers around here.
Yeah,
So
we have some of those agrimart companies and that with the straight grain trucks and fuel
yeah,
trucks and different things like that. No, 100%.
yeah. Yeah, so the towing industry, I'm not against it by any means. Obviously, I still do the podcast here, and I'm still invested in the industry. I've seen a lot of old guys not like how the industry is going, and I identify as an old man. I always have, because it's 2024, and I can identify as that now. But I've always had an old soul at heart. Of I just like to take my time and poke along, and get it done at my own pace. And yeah, it's just the glory days of towing from a lot of these old guys are gone, and I'm seeing these regulations as kind of sort of the same thing. Especially me being out of it from the outside looking in, it's like, wow,
It's
there's
very easy to take that approach.
yeah.
Yep.
If I was in the industry, it's just you adapt with it, right? But once you get out and all these regulations come in, and especially now with the towing license, I didn't grandfather myself in, which was kind of stupid, but it's like
Yeah, you probably should have applied for one.
I
Well,
should
just in
have,
case, because it wouldn't cost you anything, and just
right?
those hoops you got to jump through. Yeah.
But now to get back into the industry, even though I have 6, 7 years, however many years experience, the barrier to entry is higher. Because the
Mm,
one thing I always said is once you have towing experience, you could pretty much move anywhere and you could get a job in the
mhm,
industry because
mhm.
they're always hiring. And now if you don't have your towing license, sure, that could still be the same, but it's going to cost more, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
the barrier
that's
is
very
higher,
true.
right?
It's very true. Except I think early on in the phases of it, the more companies would be willing to help compensate that for somebody
Hmm.
with experience, given the shortage that we have in the industry.
Hmm.
But like anything, it's a risk whenever you do that to the company. So not everyone is willing to do it. It's
Hmm.
100% true.
Hmm.
I feel like and we go back to when you came and seen us at that small company.
Hmm.
Like to point out at that point, I was nothing more than an employee at the time. I was just an invested employee that was trying to help
Hmm.
whenever I could.
Yep.
That it kind of makes me think like you've bounced around from companies, and I'm not saying that in a negative way by any means, but
Mhm.
it's like you never found your company.
Yeah.
You never found somewhere that you were invested in your personal growth
Mhm.
at all times. Like you were always
Mhm.
looking out for yourself. And again, I don't mean that in a negative way, but
Mhm.
I found like you never found a company like you felt like you were, where we worked together was probably the closest because that was a very family oriented company.
Yeah.
And we did all feel very much like a bunch of like a little family.
Mhm.
But that you were, you know what I mean, invested in the future of that company. Like at the end of the day, if that company didn't succeed,
Mhm.
you weren't hurt. You
Yeah,
know
and
what I
like
mean? Like
when
I can go
we
on and do my thing somewhere else. Like I said, if I got my tow license, I can go work anywhere.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was a personality of just you overall, or if it was just you never did find your
Well,
place. Your
when we worked together, one of our coworkers, Jeff, left a little bit before I did.
hmm
And whenever you get to know this team. And at that
Mhm.
point, I was the newest guy in, but I've worked with this team for a year and a half, and
Mhm.
we all got our relationships together of, oh,
Mhm.
he's the fat ass, he's the cranky old man, he's the
Mhm.
man with all knowing wisdom and knowledge, right? Plain guy's just the poutine Frenchman over there, right? We all had those roles and the
Yep.
stereotypes, and we all had our relationships, good, bad, and indifferent.
Mhm.
And one of those people just drops out because of their own life
Mhm.
commitments.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, there's like a piece missing, and you're
Mhm.
like, will this fill the void of that good coworker?
Mhm.
And I think once one good person leaves a company or for any job that you have a good relationship with, it makes it harder to stay, right?
Especially in those
What
smaller operations,
Yeah.
100.
So then Jeff left, and then I left, and then you left
Mhm.
not long after me,
Mhm.
and there's 50% of the workforce gone out of
Mhm.
the company of 6 drivers.
And the poor guys that did everything they could to hold on to it, which we
Yeah,
we did have, right?
right? And it's unfortunately the company's no longer there, which is just
Mhm.
changing of the times. It's sad in a way, but I do have very fond memories of it.
Mhm.
However, I think if I stayed with that company and they did succeed, I think I had a lot more growing as an operator to do.
Mhm.
That company, they were small, they wanted to stay small,
Mhm.
the growth potential, they had a lot of potential, they just didn't want to pursue it,
Mhm.
right? And to no fault of their own. However,
Yeah,
they're not
their
around
business.
anymore,
Yep.
right? They're not around anymore.
Mhm.
So, can you blame that way of thinking on it? Maybe, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then when I moved up to the local towing company to me, I really liked the guy. I'm still friends with the owner of it. But he had a lot of older, rundown equipment and robbing from Peter to pay Paul for truck parts and motor parts. And that's just the
Mhm.
way it is in a small company. You got to
Mhm.
do that because the money's just not there. And working 12 out of 14 days on call every night, that's just how it was. And that wasn't really the thing for me. I loved it because it was close, and I'd probably still be there because the money was decent, and it's close to me, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, then when I moved, or I didn't move, but I worked with the company out of town, I was driving there every day. I would show up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, depending on my schedule. And I would be there for 12, 14 hours sometimes, or 10 to 12 hours. And if there's no calls being on commission, I would just sit there in the parking lot, not make any money. Or
Mhm.
I'd show up to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and just sit around for 2 hours. Well, that's not really good motivation, right? I
Mhm.
love the company. I'm still friends with the company. Love all the guys that are there. Great dudes. But for me, just being an out of towner, it makes it harder to actually grow and thrive in in this
Well,
industry
especially with
because
the
of that.
commission side of things, right? Definitely
Yeah,
made it tougher. If there was
right.
an
So
hourly side of it, it's a
there were
little more
some days where I
justifiable.
lost money just in my fuel and food,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It weren't very often, but the risk is always there,
Of
right?
course.
And when you're going to work thinking there's a risk of me not making any money today, it's harder to be motivated. And that's
Mhm.
one thing in this industry is you got to have that motivation in yourself
Mhm.
because the growth potential in the industry isn't always there. You can be a bang up good driver and
Yep.
you can maybe become a manager or an operations manager one day, but unless you're going to buy the company off of the owners,
Mhm.
the growth potential just isn't really there. Depending on the companies, you could
Yeah,
become a heavy
again, most
driver,
companies,
right?
yeah, yeah, most
Right?
companies like the
But most
company we work.
companies, I want to say, are 12 drivers or less, really, in the
Mhm.
grand scheme of things. And the growth in those companies just, ooh, you can tow a box truck now because they got a 5,500 instead of a 3,500, right?
Yeah, that was like your upgrade. That was your
Yeah.
being able to go a little bit bigger. No, it's true.
Mhm.
No, it's true. No, it's. I mean, it makes sense. It's hard to stay motivated in the industry.
Mhm.
It's definitely a great point. Is that it's very hard to stay motivated in the industry. And when you
Mhm.
come in, you just sit around and stuff like that. It's even easier to become unmotivated.
Mhm.
And once you become unmotivated, you become your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
That is something I've noticed over the years and experience I've had with different operators and different people.
Mhm.
Yeah, my story isn't. I won't say it's much different. It's very different, but very much the same in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um, I was growing up one of those guys that if I didn't love what I did, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so it took me a long time to figure out what I like to do. right? I moved around. I was one of those guys that'd work here a year, I'd leave. I'd work here a year, I'd leave. Work here a year, I'd leave.
Yep.
Right?
At least you're giving it a year, though.
Yeah, trying to find what it was that I was passionate, right? Through high school, I was very much involved in the trades.
Mhm.
I was one of the first groups in our province to go through while I was in high school. I actually attended college for my my apprenticeship first level program while still in high school. It was a OYAP program. It was the first year we had done it. Send a 17-year-old off to college in a town with a border next to that's 18 to drink and to do everything else. And what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
It was the best time I ever had. I'm 17 years old, in high school, off in college, living out of town, going to class when I wanted to, you know, and then spending time at the casino and going out drinking. The college had a bar. And of course, you would get let in with a student ID for the most part because it wasn't very hard to get fake IDs back then.
Yep. And college students are all over the age of 18.
Yeah, 100%.
In theory.
So anyways, definitely did not take full advantage of the situation, the opportunity I was given back then. Ended up failing my program. It was one of those programs, unless you pass everything, you pass nothing. And I failed in a drafting class of all things. So I was taking my plumbing apprenticeship.
Yep.
Like I said, I had a very good interest in the trades. I had done plenty of co-op. My dad actually, at the time, it was a inspector with the Ministry of Labor. So a health and safety inspector in the construction field. So it was very tough for me finding work in that field because either a company wanted me hoping that it would keep my dad off their back, or they wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot pole because they were worried, you know,
your dad would come around more.
100%. My dad would come around more if I ever said something. Like there was a lot of, I very much was at that point in my career and very young career. We're talking 18, 19 years old here, was very much in his shadow. And I did not like that. I've never been one to be in anybody's shadow. I hate the idea.
Has that caused a bit of resentment?
No,
in your relationship?
not at all. Not at all. Because hindsight, I didn't want to fucking be in. I love new construction, like especially in plumbing. Love new construction. Hated, service calls and repairs and old
dealing with the pipes full of shit already.
Exactly. Right. So no, it was good. It taught me a lot of work ethic, even as a kid, 12, 13 years old, before my father was involved in the government. He worked, he worked a bit in the trades, and I'd always go to work with him. I remember him paying me like $3.25 an hour, and he'd round down. Whatever the total was for the day, he'd round down. I never knew by how much. It was always random depending on the day. But I'd put in 12, 13-hour days at 13 years old, 14 years old in the summertime. Really helped me build that work ethic.
Yeah. So
coming out of the trades and everything, coming out of high school, didn't know what I wanted to do, right? The trades was kind of a failure thing. Didn't really want to get into it. Ended up getting in, I think at the time it was auto parts. I wanted to get into automotive somewhere. So I sold auto parts. I worked in auto parts as a counter guy, like a Napa or an O'Reilly's or whatever, but it was a smaller chain. Spent a couple years there, built up some automotive knowledge. Between that, worked at like an Active Green and Ross at one point, doing like as a lube tech. Walmart is a lube tech kind of thing, doing tires and oil changes, getting some, very, very minor automotive experience, but perfect prerequisites for the towing industry, right? It wasn't that I had I didn't know what a tie rod was, a control arm was, all that stuff. It was, you were gaining the basic. Tried my hand at selling cars. I was a car salesman for about a year and a half, and I was a terrible car salesman. Again, this was part of I'd try this. I did auto parts for a couple years. Then I did, the Walmart lube thing for a year or so. Then and at this point, just trying to find work to keep me busy. And in fields that I liked. So yeah, bouncing around like crazy. And so, yeah, I sold cars for a year. I worked at a Toyota dealership. I sold cars. I was bad. Like I said, I was very bad at it. Toyota back then too was, if you remember the older Camrys, this was about 2011, I guess 2010. There was nothing to write home about on them. They were very old people cars. And I'm like 20 years old. Yeah. Right? Like I'm like 20 years old trying to sell this grandpa Camry to a 70-year-old who's looking at me like, what do you know? Like what possible common ground can I find with these people?
Mm-hmm.
So sold a couple cars, never did really too great. Met a lot of cool people doing it. Definitely, like I have friends from this day from that I'd sold
Mm-hmm.
vehicles to.
Mm-hmm.
They moved me into the service department
Mm.
to try and like save my working there.
Yeah.
That went worse.
Hmm.
You want me to charge how much to change a cabin air filter? I know what these cabin air filters are worth. I sold auto parts for years. Like, I did not believe in screwing people. And I'm not saying that dealerships screw people. There's a value for their service.
Yep.
Difference is I was also 20 some years old and knew everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Or thought you knew everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. I acted like I knew everything.
Yeah.
So unfortunately that didn't work. I was out of work.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend of mine whose father was an electrician, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come work with me for a little bit? You know, I'm looking for, maybe we can look at your apprenticeship. Let's start you off working and see what you go." He's an electrician. So I'm like, I've done the plumbing. Let's try the electrical. Worked for like a summer with him. Enjoyed it. Again, wasn't my thing. So I had some friends that I met through the Speedway, because I was always active involved in the Speedway in our town. And they drove tow truck. And I started asking around, hey, how hard is it to get into this? This is what you need, and this and this. And again, the bar for entry, like I said, back when, was very slim.
You need a G license.
A valid license and a clean driver's abstract.
Yeah. Can you do a background check?
No, back then I don't even think I needed a background check.
Oh, well.
So they said, yeah, so you want to do some part-time work? So I got on part-time. I still remember being terrified when I was doing my abstract online. I told them I had a clean abstract, but I knew I had tickets, but I think they had expired. And I'm terrified as I'm doing this online right in front of them, and it pulls up waiting to see if there's any tickets on it. And it had none. So got the abstract, got the job, started doing it part-time. So I'm doing electrical work during the week, working for an electrician, making good money, and then doing towing on the weekends, and part-time, and not making good money. There are two very different pay structures in those jobs.
Yep.
And at one point, I still remember going to, the electrician, and going, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to get into towing. And he looked at me like I had three heads. Yeah. He's like, you have the opportunity, because he's ready to sign me up as an apprentice, to become an electrician. And you're going to throw that away to be a tow truck driver. I went, yeah. Yeah, like that is the,
And he's probably heard the stories of you talking about you only made $300.
Oh, yeah. The dumb shit. It doesn't pay worth a snot. And
yeah, you badmouthed it at this
the
job.
Stupid hours.
And your other job.
Else.
Yeah.
So that was back June 2012, is when I got into the towing industry. I worked for this company. For about, I want to say it was like 3 months, and that was not my choice. That was theirs. The company ended up actually being bought out by the company that I currently work for. So yeah, they got bought out about 3 months in. I remember being, in a bad spot, because I'm the least experienced guy here in a company buyout. There's going to be a reshuffling.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm going to make that cut.
Yep.
Right. There's much more experienced operators than I am. Now, the company I worked for had a couple culture issues and definitely had some bad stuff going on in the background. That is, one of the reasons that they got bought out, is their management structure was lacking and everything else.
Yeah.
So I'm 3 months in, company gets bought out. I believe I was full-time at that point. Company gets bought out. I'm one of the few that gets picked to actually stay on. So I'm 3 months in, this new company comes in, buys brand new trucks.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm, by the time it's all said and done, 6 months into the industry, driving a brand new tow truck, one of 3 or 4 guys on this company. And we're doing, like, this company is, there was a heavy side of it as well. It was the light duty side that he bought out. So you're getting to go to some of these wrecks that they're doing. And you're like, your eyes are open to the world. You are going, holy Jesus. So I was there from 2012 to 2015. And in 2015, me and the owner, who were both very young at the time, right? I don't remember how old I was, but we're in our 20s. He's operations manager for this company and owner, but family ownership, managing this company. He doesn't really have a great idea what he's doing. I am the most arrogant 20-some-year-old you're ever going to meet in your life, because, again,
you think he's arrogant now. Just imagine what he was back then with all the piss and vinegar.
I have humbled myself so much over the years. Oh yeah, I absolutely knew everything.
Yeah.
And this guy that was my boss didn't know, I mean, I'd been towing for as long as he had.
Yeah.
And he didn't know snot because he was some, just little rich kid that, daddy bought him a towing company. And like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'd said that to him back then. Like we fell apart.
Yeah.
I was nowhere near mature enough to, keep that job.
Mm-hmm.
I was fighting with dispatchers. I thought my shit didn't stink. I was the king, and anyone would be happy to have me.
Yeah.
So I left for a couple months before I moved away from town, and I went to the competition in town.
Mm.
And oh man, it did not take me long to realize that organization was not their strong point. And I came from a very organized company.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was a bit of a free-for-all shit show. Like, I remember, you got beef with somebody, you guys go settle it off the camera. The winner gets half a day paid off. Like this kind of stuff, right? Like, you don't like it, too fucking bad. Like, it was just a complete culture shock for me.
Mm-hmm.
I went, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So around that time, while I was still working for the first company, I started writing blog posts. I had a passion for the industry and writing different things, which later on turned into writing for Tow Canada magazine. I wrote a couple articles from them. And, that was kind of getting my involvement into, outside of just being a tow operator.
Mm-hmm.
So one of those articles was actually read by a gentleman that lives in the town that we work together. He's seen this article, reached out, wrote, "Hey, really enjoyed the article that you wrote. It was about relationships.
Yep.
And my wife really enjoyed it, and we're doing this thing. And would you help us? We're doing like a scavenger hunt for her. Would you do record a video for, a hint for her or something like that?" And I said, "No problem." Went and did it. They loved it. When I was traveling up through there one time, my in-laws, or my sister-in-law, lived up there. We stopped in for a visit, had lunch, everything like that. Got fairly close with this family.
Yep.
So at the time when I moved from my main company to this company that I tried out for 3 months and realized it was a shit show.
Yep.
We had been talking, and they were looking for an operator up that way. Now, this is about a 4-hour move for me. And I know nobody in this area.
Yep.
And it got even better. I was going to live on like a couch, and they had an apartment in their basement that their parents were moving out of that I was going to move into. Like, I left on a whim.
Wow.
Like, this was like a month preparation. Nothing really set in stone, just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. I went away from vacation with my wife. When I got back, I wasn't going back to work for the company in my hometown.
Yep.
So that was in September of 2015. I moved away on the August long weekend, or like whatever it was. I think it was the August long weekend. So it might have been August that year. Showed up, went to the tow show. I remember that because it was in August. And then on the Tuesday or whatever, started working for this new company, living on this guy's couch, like a futon in a not the living room, but off like no privacy, no whatever.
Yep.
And started working for the company where you and I work together. And it was a very family oriented company. It was an awesome place. The original owner, Bob, who passed away, was great. Such an attitude on him. If he didn't like you, you were screwed. That's for sure. But I had a bunch of little Bob rules. I remember Bob always had his Bob rules, right? No blue pen and different things like that.
Yeah. I still follow that today. I still only have black pens.
Yeah, that's a Bob rule.
Yeah.
Really thrived in the company. Really enjoyed it. Really had a good time. It was very much something. My original company back home, although it was a well organized company, it didn't feel as familiar or as family oriented as it did when we were together at the company we were together. And guys, the only reason we don't name companies is just especially that company, they were a very private company. Yeah. They're out of business now, so I really don't care overall. Yeah. But that was their thing. They always hated, you know what I mean, their name being talked about. So out of respect, we've always done that. So we worked together, got there, thrived at it, had a great time. Actually, the guy who ended up getting me in, I remember, started to have problems at the company. That led to a couple problems between him and I. All right. There was a certain expectation that, I kind of helped get you in here. Yep. You should have my back, which I don't. I'm a big believer that even yourself, when I got you in, I didn't get you into the company. I opened the door. Whatever you do with that opportunity is your business, not mine.
Yep. Yep. Saves your ass
Um,
too in case I turn out to be horrible.
100%.
Yep.
So, anyways, worked for the company, spent 5 years there. And I mean, it's probably the best 5 years I've ever had. My wife enjoyed the area. We weren't married at the time. We got married while we were up there. And I remember because we were going through, I was trying to put the timeline together before the show. And we're going through and I'm finding like pictures from like a going away party that we had the night that the week that I was leaving at the bar. Right. And like, I remember because I moved my time frame up because I had to move. And even that we had a going away party. I'm pretty sure like the owners paid for most of the drinks that night.
Yep.
We had a good time. We got a ride home in a tow truck because we were all drinking and everything else. It was one of the things. But what happened there was burnout hit me hard. Right. I'm 8 years into the industry at this point. We're about 2020. I started in 2012. I'm 8 years into the industry, 5 years up in this town. And it was a lot. That town, man, we went through some stretches where it was a lot.
Yep.
Right. And I really hit that wall. I hit that wall of, do I want to keep doing this? And same thing as you, where you come in, you do a couple of years of it, and then the taxes become a problem. And then you know what I mean? Like you're trying to find solutions around things. Like it was a lot all at once. And I finally said 8 years in, I'm not sure if I want to do this.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I want to be just a driver for the rest of my life, first of all. And at that company, that was the only opportunity there was going to be, because you're right. They had all the potential in the world, but weren't really interested in it. Right. I had a couple extra privileges that I had because I had set up myself. Like I worked on rebuilding the schedule with guys. I was, very, very involved with the team and trying to be somebody that could bring everyone together for common goals that we had.
Yep. But what was you got an extra couple of percent on your paycheck for?
I think that's what it was. Yeah. I had an extra couple percentage on it. And then, they'd pay me little bits here and there to do stuff. I think there was
large growth.
No, I had a percentage increase, and I also had a flat premium given to me. I mean, minimal, like a couple $100 or something. Like every 2 weeks I get like $200 plus the extra percentage.
Yep.
For dealing with what I dealt with. It was nothing crazy. So I decided in, so 2020 in February that, I'd signed like January, December, something like that I'd had enough. At that time, good family friend reached out and was looking to hire at his trucking company. And so his town, so I was 4 hours away from my hometown. This was pretty much dead set in the middle between my hometown and where I currently was. So I decided to take that opportunity, take a break from the towing industry. This is in the trucking industry, so still somewhat relatable.
Yep. I helped you move.
Yeah, you helped me move with the CA call. Yep. So he offered me this opportunity, and it was a very entry level position, with the final goal being his operations manager was eventually going to retire. But he's a big believer in, you're not going to start off in management. You are going to start as a grunt from the beginning, and that way you can learn the operation from the ground up.
Yep.
Fair, no problem. So moved in, moved back 2 hours closer to home, to the hometown. Did this. It did not take me long to realize that there was a reason that I was in the towing industry and not in one of these other industries.
Yep.
The idea of going to the same place every day and doing the same thing and dealing, and there was some miserable people in there, and it really taught me a lot. Moving away 4 hours away, first of all, helped me grow up. Suddenly when I moved out there, and family and everything, just absolutely. I still remember my sister saying, "You'll be back in a month. You'll be back home to your hometown in a month."
Yep.
That was motivation for me to make it work.
Yep.
I'm going to go out. I'm going to make this work. And we did. So we moved back into it was about a year and a half I did the trucking spot. I was working at a drop yard.
COVID happened while you were there.
COVID happened right as I moved in. That was the scariest time in my life. Not because COVID scared me, but I remember we just moved in. And I remember, we were hearing about COVID and everything else. And
we came down for a dinner, me and the ex-girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
Literally like 2 weeks before we went into lockdown.
Yeah. Well, right when we had moved in, I was offered to go on a snowboarding trip down to Mont Tremblant, which we normally do every year.
Mhm.
And I was like, we got the move going on with everything else. Like, it's a terrible time. My wife's like, just go.
Yeah.
You've been working hard and everything's been tough lately. Like, just go and enjoy yourself. And the next day was lockdown. Like, we were on our way to the hill wondering if it was going to be open.
Wow.
From the time we left the hill to get home that night,
Mhm.
it had gone into lockdown.
Wow.
Like, lockdown started, they had shut the hill for the year, they had whatever, everything was starting to shut down.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So I had a big fear because in the trucking industry, they took a big hit during that as well.
Mhm.
Right? Obviously, with all these stores closed and everything closed. And I was, again, new man on the totem pole.
Yep. Just
What is
moved
going to
here,
happen to
got a
me?
lot of expenses from all the move. You probably used up a
100%. My
lot of your
saving had
emergency
been
fund.
used
Yep.
up. Yeah. It was a very scary time.
Yep.
I remember calling my mom, and I was in tears. Because I was like, I made this decision to better my life and get out of the towing industry and do this, and then this happens.
Yep.
Like what did I do?
Mhm.
So got through it. Luckily, stayed on working the entire time. Got through it, but realized again this wasn't for me.
Mm.
This wasn't for me. Like the excitement of. I remember my wife asking me at the end of the day, "How was your day?" And it would always just be, "It was fine," or "It was bad." Like, what was the worst case scenario that I had? Oh, my operations manager, she's a cranky old thing. You know what I mean? Was, on my ass about something stupid that this guy did. Like, just office drama.
Yeah.
That was the biggest,
Mhm.
thing that I had for that day. And I wouldn't call it excitement because I've always hated that stuff.
Hmm.
Where the towing industry was like, how was your day today? Oh, yo, I did a car down 100-foot embankment. We were doing some, like, I had to run twin line. I was like, that excitement that you got from doing those calls, you did not get in an office setting.
Mhm.
So I started looking around, and there was a towing company that was hiring, a small little towing company in the area. So reached out to them, put a deal together with them, got employed by them. They were a company, and they're still around to this day. I always felt bad because I had zero commitment to them.
Mhm.
They were literally just a fill gap to figure out what I was going to do.
Yep.
Right? Like, it was just keep me in towing, keep me working. I
Mhm.
had no ties to this company. Like, I had zero, I was that guy that I was not getting connected to them. I had been burned by being connected from the company that we worked together. That hurt leaving.
Yep.
I was not being connected to this
Well,
company.
even how they were structured, was set up to where the drivers couldn't really get that bond the same.
Yeah,
Right? I remember
very
you
much
telling
so.
me stories where you only have to go to the office every week or two.
Yeah. Well, I was a little bit different too because I was out. Like, I was like a little second division they were running of my own little truck out there.
Yep.
But yeah, no, you went to the office like once a week.
Yep.
The truck stayed at the house, and then we worked. It was same thing, commission, but as employees, not as a broker setup.
Mhm.
And it was decent. I had like a threshold that I wanted to make every day, and
Yep.
they definitely accommodated that. Like, I made the money that I needed to make, but it was just a fill gap.
Mhm.
There was no excitement. They didn't do police work. It was all roadside work. It was all
Mhm.
like junk. The nice thing was I get to drive an hour. Like, I was driving an hour away for service calls, paid mileage the whole way.
Yeah, that's
Like,
not
because
bad.
we covered a very big area. But again, I had kind of like, it was rebuilding my passion into the industry. And once I got back to it, that's where you and I had started this show.
Mhm.
And my passion was 100%. Like, it never really stopped throughout my passion, right?
Yep.
I was still trying to write different things. I was, doing different ideas here and there. So this is back in 2021 that I started back in June for this little company.
Yep.
And then my wife and I started to question, what are we doing? We'd been in this town for a couple of years. The first job, the idea that brought us there didn't really work out.
Mhm.
And then the towing side that I'm at is just kind of, she knew it was just a stop. Like, it was just a fill.
Mhm.
And now I love my wife through all of this, because don't forget, my wife is moving at all these times, and she's starting new jobs and everything else. And every one of these moves has been to chase my dream,
Yep.
to chase my passion. They have never been about chasing something she wanted.
Yeah.
Ever. As selfish as that is, but no one that knows me will be surprised by that.
Yep.
So then we get a call. And it was from the original company from my hometown, where me and my owner, disagreed. And this is, 7 years later.
Yep.
Almost. We had always maintained contact here and throughout it, right? We were better friends when we didn't work together than when we did.
Mhm. He's a
And he
big
reached,
figure in the towing industry now.
what's that?
He's a big figure in the towing
Yeah,
industry.
he was
Yeah.
even then, but he was a
Yeah.
shadow then too. He was in
Yeah.
a shadow.
Yeah.
So he reached out to me one day and he called me and he said, "Hey, would you ever consider coming back to work for me?" And my answer was no.
Mm.
Legit. My first thing that I said was no,
Yeah.
I would not. And he says, "Okay." But I said, "I'm also not one to close doors.
Yeah.
So what do you got in mind? And I'll see if I'm interested."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, I'm not going to put together anything if you're not going to be interested."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, then you don't know if I'll be interested until you put it together, right?" It's kind of we're playing a game of chicken here. We've known each
Yeah.
other for many years throughout all this. We had gone to tow shows together. We had, he'd stayed at my
Mhm.
place, whatever. And he said, "I'm looking for a manager. And this is what I'm offering." And
Mhm.
I talked to my wife. I said, "Hey, it's an opportunity to go back to our hometown,"
Mhm.
which is probably one of the best things I ever did was move away from the hometown. I'm not
Yeah.
talking shit on the hometown, but it was such a growth and maturing time.
Mhm.
It was one of the best things I ever did. And then getting away from all the drama that you had back when, from everybody knowing everybody in a small town, and you come back and you're suddenly like not involved in it. It's great.
Yeah.
So he said, "I'm looking for a manager." And I said, "Okay, well, let's put some numbers." And we went back and forth for a couple months and we finally made a deal.
Mhm.
Said, "Okay, I'll come back." I remember I came back in November of 2021. And I still remember the joke is I was supposed to be light duty manager.
Mm.
And the day that we're signing the paperwork, he was missing a spot to put the title in because this whole time we had agreed on light duty manager.
Mhm.
And he goes, "Screw it, operations manager."
Mm.
And I'm like, "It's kind of a different thing, but whatever." It was just, to me,
Yeah.
I don't care about title.
Yeah.
Right. So I came back in November. My wife stayed up in our original town all the way until February, until we could secure housing.
Mhm.
He needed me in for November to come in for the winter time.
Yep.
But I hadn't set up a place, so I stayed at an apartment in my mother's basement
Mhm.
for a couple months while my wife and I figured out where we were going to actually move to in the town. And
Yeah, if you
actually
go
get
back
lodged.
to watch previous episodes, there's a few laptop podcasts where he's sitting
100%
on
with
a
the gold
couch.
chairs in my
Yep.
background. Yeah, that was 100% during that time. And if you go back and watch the Towing Life podcast, you will see every one of these moves that I've talked about. And you
Mhm.
can base the year on the last 3 years over it, because it
Yep.
started in the town 2 hours away.
Yep.
And then you see from there, and then you see from there to my mom's basement, and
Yep.
then you see to the place that we're currently at now.
Yep.
So you can actually watch in just even thumbnails of every episode to spot
Mhm.
really quick when it was.
My biggest move was from the kitchen into here.
Yeah, exactly. Your kitchen with your big bay windows behind you.
Yeah.
So no, I came back here, got involved in management and operations, and it was definitely like a reinvestment in the
Yeah,
industry.
you're
Like
seeing a little bit of a different side of the industry.
it re-energized me too, right? It gave me something. I always said I didn't want to just drive my entire life. I
Mhm.
wanted to do something with my passion,
Yeah.
which I've been given that opportunity to do with here.
Mhm.
Given that opportunity with a company with a great reputation, a
Mhm.
company that I never would have thought back in the day, being a family-owned operation, would give control to an individual that wasn't their family. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? I always believed that there was no point in ever being a manager with this company,
Yep.
because at the end of the day, you weren't a manager, you were a puppet for
Yep.
their structure and their beliefs.
Mhm.
It's not at all the case. You are allowed to come in and make your decisions and make your mistakes and make, you know what I mean, find things that are going to work and learn from things that are not going to work.
Yep.
The company has always given me that, and I've always held a soft spot for this company.
Mhm.
Even through all the years that I was gone and everything like that, I always kept a spot for that company.
Yep.
And I mean, I left burning it to the ground.
Yeah.
Right. They say don't burn your bridges. I didn't just take out the bridge. I took out the railway that went to it. I took out I took out the river.
Yeah.
And for a lack of maturity
Mhm.
and getting that opportunity to step away, grow up, move away, see what life is actually about, live, you know what I mean? Like away from that small town and all that bullshit, and grow
Mhm.
up into an operator that, becomes the man with very strong opinions.
Hmm.
The industry has granted me that. Right
Yep.
now, again, how was your day? Hey, we operated a tractor trailer that was rolled over fully loaded on a 400 highway.
Mhm.
You know, we pulled an excavator out with 13 lines to load because it was so buried down into the dirt.
Yeah.
You know, we did all these jobs. You know, I've gotten to grow and hire and nurture and watch operators with that passion that I had when I first started.
Mhm.
Right? Like seeing them go and, you know what I mean, watching the burnout come in because they don't know better than to go home.
Yeah.
You know, and trying to work on that kind of stuff and truly building something the way that somebody gave me that opportunity and everything. It's been a humbling experience.
Mhm.
I still need to work on my dealing with people. I still am learning new tricks and tips on all
Yep.
that good stuff, but that is it. So, you know, looking back now at where I started in 2012 and being in 2024,
Mhm.
the changes that have happened in the industry, you know what I mean, my views of the industry,
Mhm.
how eyes wide shut I was when I was younger, thinking that I knew everything.
Yep.
Right. I won't go on to like you did and you know, the importance and the lessons that you learned in the industry. What I'd rather give is advice to somebody that's starting off.
Mhm.
And that is, you don't have a clue yet. And I don't mean that in a condescending way.
Mhm.
I do not mean that these 2-3 year operators have no idea what they're talking about. They've obviously seen some stuff and put in their time.
Mhm.
But there is so much more that if you stick with this industry and find the right place to land, that
Yeah.
you have the potential to see some wild stuff in this industry. But it's all about
Mhm.
finding your spot. Mine was finding my spot back home in my hometown.
Yep.
You gotta find the spot that's going to give you every opportunity to advance in the towing industry.
Mhm. And make sure to tune in next week because we're going to go through childhood trauma of what sends people into the towing industry.
What makes people want to join the towing industry short of lack of medication for their disorders? But yeah, so anyways, I hope that was a little enlightening. I hope it wasn't too
Mhm.
boring and long drawn out.
If you have any questions, put them in the comments down below or save them for the live stream coming up at the end of the month.
Absolutely. If you want to know, you know, anything that we didn't cover on our story, if you actually care about it,
Mhm.
I think some people will. Some people will enjoy it. It's nice to know, like,
Yep.
this is
Or
who we
tell
are.
us yours.
We're regular operators who went through a lot of the same struggles that you guys have
Mhm.
at the end of the day. So if you do want to reach out to us, like G said, you can leave a comment down below if you're watching over on the YouTube side. If not, head over to the website, www.towinglife.ca. Email us directly at thetowinglife@gmail.com or find us over on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast. Do not forget Sunday, August 25th, 6 p.m. Eastern, for our live episode for celebrating episode 150, Live 3.0. We will be there. We hope to see you there as well. Until then, we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Toodles.